Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We're tackling a subject that, let's be honest, usually makes IT and legal folks sweat a little bit: GDPR compliance. But don't worry, we are absolutely not just sitting here reading the rulebook today. Instead, we're going to look at the heavy lifting of data infrastructure and how a fundamentally different approach to system design can entirely change the game for data privacy.
Because it's so incredibly easy to get lost in the dense, frankly boring legal jargon of the General Data Protection Regulation, right? But we really have to ground ourselves right off the bat with this idea. Behind every article of the GDPR is a person whose data should be handled the way the law intends. The entities at risk when data privacy fails, they aren't just rows in a database. They're real human beings. We're talking about patients, bank customers, employees, people who are literally trusting these systems with their digital lives.
And that brings us to the definitive case study for today's explainer. We're looking at Iagon. They act as the foundational infrastructure layer for the shared storage and compute economy. Basically, they're a decentralized cloud infrastructure tackling this massive privacy challenge head-on, and they're doing it by taking a completely structural route to handling personal data safely. It's really fascinating stuff.
So here is our roadmap for navigating the weeds of privacy law today. First, we'll look at the human behind the data. Second, we'll contrast process versus architecture. Third, we'll be mapping the GDPR directly to this infrastructure. And finally, we'll wrap up by discussing how to build a defensible position. Let's jump right into part one, the human behind data. As you know, the sheer scale of modern networks really amplifies why protecting that individual behind the screen is just so absolutely crucial right now. To put that scale into perspective, take a look at this number, 26,291. That is the rapidly growing number of active transactions being processed across the open network right at this very moment. So this isn't just theory. It's not some pie-in-the-sky white paper concept. This is live infrastructure that people are actually using, working right out in the open. And here's the kicker. Those transactions aren't just sitting in one giant, vulnerable corporate data center waiting to be breached. They're supported by an independent, global network of over 785 decentralized nodes. It's a completely distributed approach to storage and computing. Furthermore, this decentralized network spans more than 56 countries. Now think about that. When you're moving data across that many international borders, dealing with that many independent nodes, your compliance strategy doesn't just need to be good. It needs to be absolutely ironclad. Seeing this kind of global footprint builds immediate credibility for the solution we're about to explore.
So, the crucial point is, how do we handle compliance securely at this massive scale? Well, this brings us to section 2, process versus architecture. It's a total paradigm shift in how we manage data.
Let's clearly define what we mean here with compliance by design. It means regulatory requirements become an inherent property of the system's architecture, rather than a separate process just kind of wrapped around it. See, most systems treat GDPR as a total afterthought, right? It's something layered on through written policies and stressful recurring audits long after the system is already built. This concept, it shifts that paradigm completely. And this comparison brilliantly illustrates the core difference. Think of it like baking a cake. The traditional process method is essentially trying to frost a cake after it's baked. You're adding certifications and policies on top, and it relies entirely on flawless human execution. And let's face it, if a human slips up, the protection fails. Architecture, on the other hand, is built in. You're baking those compliance ingredients right into the batter. Protection isn't some top layer you have to remember to switch on. It is literally the system's standard default behavior. Okay, let's move along to section 3, mapping the GDPR. We're going to look at the hard technical evidence now and see exactly how this architectural philosophy explicitly maps to actual concrete legal requirements. And this brilliantly illustrates how Iagon tackles specific GDPR articles structurally. Just look at Article 25, Design and Default. Instead of crossing your fingers and hoping someone remembers to configure the protection, Iagon encrypts data on the client side and then fragments, or shards, it across independent nodes, meaning no single node holds a readable copy. No way to leak what you can't read, right? For Article 32, Security of Processing, the keys stay securely with the customer, operating on a strict zero-trust model. And what about Articles 44 through 49, the ones regarding international transfers? Well, because the network is global, you just use their built-in residency controls. Geographic placement becomes a simple configuration choice rather than a massive, sprawling legal headache.
Continuing down the map, Article 5 demands minimization and accountability. The system tackles this by automatically generating operational audit trails as it naturally does its thing. You don't have to manually scramble to assemble proof after the fact. And for Articles 12 through 23, the rights of the data subject, like access and deletion requests, thanks to the built-in data discovery and exportability, what used to be a highly stressful, drop-everything manual search under a strict legal deadline is transformed into just a standard, easily executable operational task. Which leads us perfectly into our final section, a defensible position. Let's talk about what this paradigm shift practically means for business executives, IT leaders, and legal teams who actually have to stand up and defend their data practices. Now, to be completely clear here, building compliance into your architecture doesn't magically wipe away your company's governance obligations. Obviously, no system does that. But what it changes, fundamentally, is the quality of the evidence for that governance. When regulators inevitably come knocking, documents like data protection impact assessments don't just vaguely describe intended controls anymore. Instead, they can point to concrete, mathematically provable system properties. It's a game changer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the profound long-term impact. Compliance stops being this frantic, all-hands-on-deck manual reassembly for each and every audit. And because this specific architecture is patented and legally protected in more than 15 jurisdictions, it prevents easy, unauthorized alteration and maintains incredible system stability. This isn't just some neat tech upgrade we're talking about. It represents a structurally sound, highly defensible, and ultimately much more honest position for any company tasked with handling other people's data. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As we said right at the very beginning, behind the database records, behind the legal rules, and behind the network nodes, there is a real actual person relying on you to keep them safe. So ask yourself, procedural trust or structural proof? Which does your data rely on? Do you want to merely trust that a process was followed correctly by a human? Or do you want to structurally prove your compliance to the people relying on you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this sparked some deep curiosity and maybe some new ideas on how we can all build the future of privacy.